Sonic Lost World is a game that very rarely gets talked about, and honestly for good reason. It came out of this time period where we thought Sonic was doing good but ended up taking a second downward spiral. But it wasn't that remarkable because it wasn't the expectation defying Sonic generations that made people believe Sonic was back for good, but it also wasn't the disaster that was Sonic Boom or the most recent underwhelming title Sonic Forces, which proved to us that he wasn't. It just kinda happened and people collectively forget about it. It's not as bad as something like Sega Sonic the Hedgehog or Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car, but people never seem to talk about it when talking about Sonic Team Sonic games. I swear to god, Sonic Runners gets brought up more than Sonic Lost World. It was also a Wii U exclusive for most of its life, so that probably didn't help it. Regardless, it's a very special Sonic game to me, and it's the first Sonic game I followed up until release and got day one, and honestly, I don't regret it, but this lack of fanbase made the game very rarely get covered on YouTube, and if no one's willing to do it, I will. So today I want to talk about the development, beta, and cut content of Sonic Lost World. And maybe some other stuff. This script is long as fuck. Also, if you couldn't notice, I learned how to mod Sonic Lost World, and now Red Spin Dash is in the game. So I'm gonna be using him for this gameplay footage I'm gonna be providing.
Fuck you.
And something I forgot to mention in the original recording, this is a backup recording that I had to do. Most of the information, in fact no, all of the information that I didn't research myself comes from the Sonic Wiki, the cutting room floor, and the footage of the pre-release demos come from GameSpot, IGN, GameXplain, and Sonic's channel, which is one now I believe 1UP's channel, something like that. Point is that those are the credits. All of them are gonna be in the description. Sonic Lost World's development started after Sonic Colors and during Sonic Generations. The team was experimenting with a new type of Sonic game and simultaneously wanted a 3DS game to utilize all of the portable's features. A PC build of the game started development, with it later moving on to the Wii U because of Sonic's popularity in Nintendo consoles, and obviously as part of the 3-game deal Sega made with Nintendo. This is also the reason why the Wisps came back, because of Sonic Colors', reception in that console. It was at this moment a 3DS version was added to the plans, but was outsourced to Dimps, because, they had a good reputation with portable Sonic games. Sonic Team wanted to make a game that was quote-unquote 100% Sonic, with both 2D and 3D sections, while also giving new players something brand new. Isn't that every fucking Sonic game? During one brainstorm session, someone suggested Twisted Tube-like levels, drawing inspiration from Jack and the Beanstalk. The team had so little experience with these levels that for the first level had to be built, broken down, rebuilt, broken down, and built again for half a year to get its finished version. This is probably the reason stages in trailers and playable demos barely have differences from their final versions. Spoiler alert, sorry. This affected the 3DS version even more because of its lack of power compared to the Wii U. The parkour system was designed specifically for this game and its level design, which honestly I don't really see. Aaron Weber and Sam Mueller, two Sega officials, would later give insight as to why this parkour system was made. The whole parkour system conceptually comes from the simple fact that in past Sonic games, Sonic would move really fast and he was kind of uncontrollable, and then you'd just run into objects and just stop. So we went back to basic controls and said, okay, how do we get past this? People do not like running around fast and then stop. It started out as really simple things, like when Sonic hits a corner, he would just glance past it. So we thought, what if he runs up walls and grabs ledges? And it sort of enveloped from there into the state it is now. It's a matter of giving players a reason to use the kick attack versus the homing attack, and having enemies that you'll have to use a certain combination, such as a homing attack and then a kick. It's really nice to have that kind of control in a Sonic game. It all boils down to the fact that we want players to maintain a flow even if they're not having a sort of perfect playthrough. This way, the flow of a hype level player can be enjoyed by a novice player. What I find really interesting in this code is not even the main point of the code, it's this bit. The scenario of the homing attack and then kicking never shows up in game. The opposite does a handful of times, but not this one. The most I could find is egg pawns, where you can homing attack and then kick them, but you can also just kick them or homing attack them twice. It's not like, say, crab meat, where you have to kick and then homing attack. Sega also hoped that with the slower platforming, Mario fans would also play it. Eventually the game released to mixed reception, which, little sad, but hey, it still existed. In this segment, I'm going to say some differences I found in the trailers, all like 3 of them. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't choose to be a fan of a game with a more interesting development, but you know, you don't really get to choose those things. With the game's first gameplay trailer being released relatively close to the game's release date, it makes sense that the differences aren't many. Let's get into them anyway. The first one is here, where we can see a slightly different layout of Windy Hill's underside, which we'll see more in detail in a bit. The next one is actually directly after this, and it's a pretty big one. The kick attack looks a lot slower and less like a homing attack variant than it does in the final game. Near the end of the trailer, they show off this structure, and by intuition of this 10 ring, we can assume that we're in the first area of Windy Hill Zone. And this structure doesn't show up in that area. It shows up in the next one, which is shown on the trailer, but in the final game it doesn't show up in this specific area. Another thing to note is that the laser diamonds are colored differently here than in the final game, but it was possibly to hide the fact that the wisps were returning, which was shown off in another trailer, one that we'll talk about now.
That shit look like the battle pass.
There's nothing much of note here other than the debris of asteroid look a little different, and you could do multiple dashes in succession with Eagle. I might have said we missed out on the Eagle bit if the better option wasn't just removing the wisp entirely. Also, in the final game they placed asteroid here instead of here and replaced the sheep in its original placement. Riveting, I know. Also, these spikes back here never show up in the sun being played here, at least that I could tell. Eagle is also not intended to be in this section, but the one after that, again from what I can tell. I was going to move on to this Japanese overview trailer, but turns out there are either very small differences or no differences at all, which, you know, makes sense, it's an overview trailer. I did have a suspicion about this red ring placement, so I went through the entire level again to find out that, yep, it's in the same spot. I'm gonna take a quick look at the Deadly Six extended trailer for a second, because what's this? Like, is it a glitch? Is it the way it was intended to work? Yeah, this is the only difference I could find in all 6 of these trailers. A little pathetic, to be honest.
In the beginning.
Anyway, moving on to the Lost Hex trailer, we can see here finally something that changed. This place is very empty, but in the final game there is a loop in its place. That's it, and even then this could have happened. And in here, they changed the layout of it, since in the trailer, there are 2 enemies carrying items and through this strip of ice, which is removed in the final game, and in its place is just 1 enemy. One of the other few differences we can see in this trailer is that in the Skyroad Zone 4, rhythm isn't seen in this segment, unlike the final game. Now this is incredibly interesting because we didn't hear the wisp effect, so he didn't just grab it and not use it. But here's the weirder part. I don't know when this trailer was released. The upload clearly is a re-upload, and it was uploaded October 3, 2013, mere weeks before the release of the actual game. But all the wisp heavy sections are not shown in this trailer, despite this trailer showing off every level. The Colors trailer also released at its earliest in IGN's release in 2013, on June 2013, meaning they had no reason to hide rhythm here because they already showed off this exact section. But that's if the trailer was released close to the day it was uploaded. But if it was released before, then how did they have all the levels finalized? I need sleep. Besides that, the rest of the trailers is the same as the final game. Those are all the trailers, so let's move on to the playable demos. Despite the game having its trailer documented pretty well, I couldn't find a list of playable appearances it made, so I just assumed the only playable demos were at TGS, E3, and some other big conventions. The first playable demo appearance I can pinpoint is a stage demo at E3, so we'll be looking at that one first, provided by GameSpot or IGN depending on who I decide to use. The first stage stays relatively the same, but the first interesting thing is this. I don't know what witchcraft whoever was playing this used to get this blazing speed from a standstill. You can do this in the final game but with a fully charged peel out. They do this later in the trailer, but not here. As you can assume, you can't do this in the final game. It was probably an oversight they noticed in this footage anyway. We noticed the first level design difference in these rings that were changed into animal capsules later. Look, I'm stretching to make this interesting. Another small change is in this final section of the level, where the laser wisp and crystals are farther away than in the final game, and yeah, those are all the differences in the first level, at least from the bit of footage shared by GameSpot. Near the end, they show off the underside of the first segment of the level, and has a handful of changes. In the final game, these spikes are laid out differently in this section, not to mention that there are more rings and the laser crystal path is different as well, having a more zigzag pattern than the straight line in the final game. The laser path in the final game also puts you in the speed booster, which it doesn't in the demo. Another small change is that this animal capsule has a lot more spikes surrounded in the demo for some reason. And finally, in this segment, the laser path from the final game is just straight up not here, and there's also more spikes than there are in the final game. What's interesting about this is that in the final, this exact path is still there. It's just not surrounded by spikes anymore. Like if you get in the speed boost, it moves in the exact same trajectory it did in the demo, but it just doesn't have fucking spikes around it anymore. Moving on, Desert Ruins Zone 3 is also playable in this demo and had a weird difference in the beginning. You see, in the final game, this entire section, until these 2 motor bugs, are entirely automated. But in the E3 demo, halfway there are just no more boosters and 3 motor bugs. Honestly, I don't even know why this was how it was originally. It automates you again directly afterwards. Anyway, a bit afterwards, they make it to this section, which has 1 enemy instead of the 3 it has in the final game. Also, this is where we first see the early version of the kick attack, which for some reason looks faster than both the revealed version and the final version. I might be wrong, but you know, it just looks more interesting. And it also looks a lot more like a homing attack variant than its final counterpart. It even follows a very similar arc that the homing attack does. There's all of these bus bombers that are just removed in the final game along with one of the earlier 3. This is also my favorite part because the kick just bugs out for some reason. Really sad this was removed in the final game. I'm serious, I tried recreating it to no avail. That's probably the reason more of these motorbugs were added here in the final game, and the top one was moved to the lower Licorice platform. Also, some fucking camera angle differences, and in this segment, these fuckers, whose name I still don't know.
Guess who? Yes, it's Spin Dash, here to fix another of Hedge's mistakes. He was a dumbass in the original recording, but what he meant here was that there are 2 of these guys here, and 6 in the final game.
And the speed booster was added here for honestly no reason, since you can't even reach the cannon without a spin dash in the final game anyway. After the cannon, we get to this part, which you might notice that in the final game it had a lot of bus bombers, but in the E3 demo it didn't. What I find interesting is that in the final game, they're the only way for you to get to the other side. After checking some other footage, it turns out the demo's way of remedying this was adding a cannon. Also, for some reason, the final animal capsule is to the right of the platform in the demo, and not to the left like it is in final. This is a change so small that I genuinely have zero clue as to why they did this. Moving on to Desert Ruins Zone 2, which was played after Zone 3 for some reason, we can see here that there are 3 rings in the final game that are absent in the demo. Look, again, I'm really stretching. There's also an extra life added here in the final game for no real reason, because this is the level where you can exploit getting 3 lives over and over again. But they probably made that so you wouldn't just keep getting extra lives and, you know, just run out the demo. You know, more people wanted to play the demo, so, you know, get the fuck out of the way. Yeah, those are the only differences in this level. Oh, and that you have to jump to this for this red ring, which you don't in final. And the fact that the level ends with a capsule, but Aaron basically says the level ends with the boss end for the final game.
You're a beta male, Sonic.
Now thankfully, or sadly depending on who you ask, after this first demo, since the rest of the places it was shown at were taking place close to its release, they all use the same demo from a nearly completed game, meaning the only changes that were here are either incredibly small or obviously meant to add content from the final release. Mainly 2 boss acts show up that end up with a capsule, and interestingly enough, a gold ring. If you played the game, you know, the final game, you know the only time gold rings appear are in multiplayer, and that's only in the Wii U version, so seeing it show up in normal gameplay and so out of place too, just honestly just feels weird. And the act that had the gold ring was the snowball level, so I had to play through this entire level to see if I could find any more differences, and turns out there is a single Yeti that was added in the final release that is not in the fucking demo. But apparently there's another difference, and this one's extremely weird. In Frozen Factory Zone 3, not only do the chips follow you in a different way, but the color of the carpet was changed from red in the demo to purple in the final. Actually, looking more into it, everything that wasn't a constant, like Sonic or the enemies, was changed in color in some way. I was so baffled by this change that I looked for more footage from the demo, which was a lot harder than it needed to be, to see if it was just a Sonic channel thing, and no, it's red everywhere else. I even looked up more Wii U gameplay from the final game to see if it was just me on PC, and nope, they changed it in Wii U too. This is so weird. I legit have absolutely zero clue as to why they did this. Maybe it was to differentiate themselves from Casino Night, or maybe gambling issues. Whatever it is, it's really interesting. If you guys have any clue as to why this change could have happened, please comment it. I really want to know your opinion on this. Again, since there is no clear list of this game's playable appearances, these are the only 2 demos I could find. If you can find any I didn't cover, once again, I'd appreciate it if you commented in the comment section. You know, where else are you gonna comment it? And I'm not gonna go out there looking into the depths of hell trying to find more demos, because I know this video won't blow up, and it will only become important when Boundary Breaks or Beta 64 covers it, so I don't want to make their jobs too easy. So that's all the pre-release stuff. What about the content in the disc? What about the unused content? Unfortunately, as it is a trend with Sonic Lost World, there's not a lot here that went unused, but there's a couple of interesting things here, so let's look into them. Let's start off with the easiest to explain, which are these unused ramps. They are leftovers from Generations, which shared its content with Colors, which started from Unleashed. These ramps made quite the jump, no pun intended.
Yep, it's me again. Because this absolute dumbass forgot the most important unused objects, wood box and iron box. Can't even believe we're the same person. Might dissociate later.
There are also these unused Eggman voice lines. A lot of these are grunts, so I'll just play some of the more interesting ones.
Ho 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 ho! Prepare yourself! I'm sick of you getting in the way every single time! This is it! This is really it!
As an interesting fact, some of these were used in the 3DS version. Though if you think I'm gonna play it again just to check these, you're clearly fucking insane. Hey everyone, this is future Hedgie. Yeah, not past Hedgie, future Hedgie. And I just came here to say that I kind of got this one wrong because there's also some unused voice lines from Sonic and the Deadly Six. I could not find many of the Deadly Six ones because it's a lot of data to go through, but I did find some interesting ones from Sonic, so I'll play the Eggman ones first, and then I'll talk about the Sonic ones.
Not too shabby. I can live with that. Way to go! Yeah, aced it!
So the reason I found the Sonic ones interesting is because they are used in the 3DS version. And not only that, they're used in the result screen when you get a rank, meaning that at some point the Wii U version might have also had a ranking system similar to other Sonic games instead of just being time trials. And some other interesting stuff I found is these two audios.
Hello? Hey, let's go.
They imply that Sonic was gonna get impatient and be vocal about it, like he was. Well, not he wasn't vocal, but you know, he was like when he got impatient in the classic games. That was what he would sound like if he had a voice like Roger Craig's-Met. So at some point in development, Sonic talked when he wanted you to fucking go. So yeah, that's interesting. I think there's also an unused music track in the final that resembles a melancholy sounding Get jingle. Take a listen. I don't know what this would have been used for, since I don't really see any overworld item as negative, but who knows, maybe this is a remnant of something bigger. There's also this unused demonstration video called SLW B-roll kiosk 14th May, which given its name was most likely a video that was meant to play if the E3 demo was left idle for a while. It even has the beta aspects of Windy Hill Zone 1. Kinda weird that it made it all the way to the PC release. That's actually where it was found. There's some unused text in the game saying, you can use this pin dash to run along surfaces of the water without falling in. For the longest time, I thought this was hot BS, but I heard a lot that you could do it in the first puddle of Windy Hill Zone 2. And for the longest time, I thought these people were high as fuck, but turns out, yeah, you can do it. It's with this weird release and hold version of the move, but I actually always wondered what this was used for other than rolling over sand without losing speed. It also works in Windy Hill 1 on this little section. I guess this was meant to have bigger sections in game, but it ended up not having any more than this, which was possibly meant to be a tutorial. It's kind of interesting to see a feature that got cut but also not at the same time. On the topic of game mechanics, we all know that the Wisp returned, but according to both the Sonic Wiki and the cutting room floor, more were meant to show up. The Sonic Wiki says only Cube and Spikes were supposed to return, but the cutting room floor says that all the Wii Wisps were supposed to return, and I'm more inclined to believe the latter, seeing as the file testmission.lua contains the Phantom Spike, Puzzle, and Rodeo. Spike is self-explanatory, but what about Puzzle and Rodeo? Well, those are the internal names for Cube and Frenzy. They were cut pretty early on, since there's no remnants of them other than the names being mentioned here. The only one that looks like it got far into development was Spikes, since it's referenced in Sonic's file in the final game with a file that seems to be referencing its startup animation. Interestingly enough, there's another presumed Wisp that got cut along with these three, this time a new one. In actmission.lua at the very beginning, along with the other Wisp names, is the name Snake. Again, this seems to be cut pretty early on since this is the only reference in the files that at least I can see. There's another thing I forgot to mention about testmission.lua, and that's that it has ranks be determined by points, by a score system. For those who know Sonic Lost World, Wii U, and PC even has rankings, this isn't how it works. It's based entirely on how fast you can beat the stage because they're essentially time trials. The 3DS version still works by score, but not the Wii U. This was possibly another remnant of the game having colors as base code, which, it makes sense. A lot of the testmission.lua file just references a lot of things in colors. And with that, we are Not done. Sonic Lost World also released on PC, and that has its own handful of unused aspects. That's actually how the video I showed up earlier got found, which I already mentioned, but it's in the script, I'm just reading it again. Along with another unused video which I saw and really has nothing new. There's a lot of unused stuff from the Wii U version, of course. A lot of things I won't mention here. Interestingly enough, Zelda and Yoshi are still mentioned in the files. I thought Sega would try their hardest to scrub Nintendo off the game.
Guess what? We fucking missed something again. All of the DLC stages have a time limit for their S ranks, meaning that maybe at some point DLC stages were supposed to have rankings as well. This seemed to be scrapped after releasing the Knights stage though, since the Yoshi and Zelda stages have what looks to be a placeholder time limit.
There is an unused option for screen space ambient occlusion. Please forgive me for not knowing what exactly that means. The Go Ring also now goes unused since multiplayer mode isn't available anymore, but you can actually still use it in debug mode, though I couldn't figure out how to connect to second player. The Go Ring also still has its functionality intact, so I guess modders go nuts. And with that, we are done. This video was a massive undertaking for me, and I appreciated it a lot if you stuck to the end. Sonic Lost World is a game I'm very passionate about, and I wanted to make a video talking about its development since I hadn't seen any yet. And again guys, thank you for sticking to the end. If you did, hopefully I can make more videos like these in the future, and yeah, see ya.